All right, guys, welcome back to Jiu Jitsu Motivation Podcast. I'm Greg Melita, Jiu Jitsu black belt, second degree, owner of Hampton's Jiu Jitsu, marketing for Kasai.
And I'm Brian DeLuca, black belt and author of Jiu Jitsu for Small People and Other Weird Shit I Think About.
So we got a special guest on today, Kenny Florian. I really appreciate you coming on, man. And we worked together at a couple Kasai shows. And obviously through me coming up through the ranks in Jiu-Jitsu and Brian too, was just a big inspiration for us in Jiu-Jitsu, seeing in your MMA and your competition background. So I really appreciate you coming on today.
Greg, Brian, thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, first, we just want to, give you a shout out. Recently, your YouTube channel has been putting out some awesome content with not only the topics of what you're showing, but the production value of it. And can you give us some more information on that?
Yeah, I feel like everything really has been moving digital for a long time now. YouTube, online education is something that I think is moving so quickly. I still feel like I'm late to the party in a lot of ways, but I just really became more aware of it. And during the pandemic, I was just thinking of different ways. As I was moving out of Los Angeles, I was looking for ways where I can still kind of teach and help former students or new prospective students out. And I said, there's so much content out there, there's so many techniques out there, and the way that I try to teach is more of a conceptual approach. I said, well, let me start doing that. And let me start a YouTube page. And one of my students, Justine Ezerick, she was like my first or second private student in LA. And she was like a YouTube OG that reviewed tech products, and she traveled all over the world doing different things. And, she was just a great kind of mentor and teacher in that regard, of kind of helping me out on that end. Not only with suggestions of how to go about it, but she actually filmed it, helped me edit it. And I produced an instructional video back in November that I'm hoping to release in the next couple of weeks. But in the meantime, I've been releasing YouTube content and trying to give something different, and basically trying to create a formula for people who are at their academies and learning techniques, and there are thousands of them, to basically go, okay, I have all these techniques, how do I make sense out of it? And basically, I've been trying to create a formula. My goal was to create a formula, not only with my YouTube page, but with my instructional, where people can kind of plug in what they're doing and say, this is how it works. And now I can understand things better from that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, there's no more secrets anymore in the industry. There's so much information out there. Everything's on YouTube and instructionals and all different types of, platforms. So I think you hit it right on the head there, where it's like, there's so much information. How are people going to be able to organize that or be able to seek out different things? And, everything's digital, everything's going online. So I think you're, exactly spot on about that.
Right. And how are they connecting those techniques together, becomes so important. It's just not like, here's a technique. Like, what is the pattern, right? How do you connect all those pieces?
Absolutely, Brian. I think that, I have a pretty decent memory. Early on, I would be able to memorize a lot of techniques. I would train every day, a couple times a day. I had a journal where I would write down techniques and all that stuff, and I would refer to it. But after a certain point, the memory is limited, right? And I think that, do I memorize a concept that can apply to thousands of techniques, or do I memorize 1,000 techniques? I would prefer to, understand how a position works, over memorizing a bunch of techniques, which I did early on. And I also think that, at the heart of martial arts, if we are training to defend ourselves, right? We're training to defend ourselves in an unknown scenario, in an unknown situation. Like, I don't know if someone is going to try to punch me, kick me, take me down, pull a knife, pull a gun. I don't know any of those scenarios. So how do I train with in a systematized way for an unknown scenario, and I think that concepts kind of help to fill in that gap, and allow us to think on the fly a lot quicker.
Yeah, I mean, that's it with them. So many, and not only just talking about the evolution of jiu-jitsu and how many more techniques are, being developed and things like that, but the more you do concept-based approach of teaching, the more it doesn't matter the number of techniques in the library of your mind. You're just going to apply it. Even now you talk about jiu-jitsu is, based on your body type, your personality, your flexibility, and all that. I mean, you can only show so many techniques, but if you're concept-based, that's going to be the difference between maybe somebody being able to add their own flavor.
Couldn't agree more. And I think that, jiu-jitsu is a science, but I think many times we forget it is an art. I mean, you look at a lot of the best guys in the world. I mean, they all have different styles. There's not just like one size fits all type scenarios. And I think that as teachers, we need to be more open-minded to that stuff, that hey, everyone's built different. Everyone thinks different. And everyone kind of has a different approach, and to kind of put everyone under one system could be harmful in some ways. I don't want everyone to just do things the way I do it. I want them to do it the way that they do it. But, there are rules that you need to follow. But within those rules, it's hey, have fun with it. Be creative. Go nuts.
And I think to that point, once you understand the concepts, right, the foundational piece is you see stuff more in real time. Then, and you can be creative with it because it is in real time versus going, okay, I'm in this position. What technique do I need to do to get out of this position? You don't think that way when you're fighting. It just doesn't happen.
Totally. And I also think it locks us in to a certain scenario where we end up stalling each other, because it's if I have a given or if I have a set amount of techniques or a certain approach with a system, and you have a certain system, and we both know those systems, what happens? We get shitty jiu-jitsu matches. It's I don't want to move because I know what you're going to do, and you're stopping all my techniques, and you're stopping my techniques. So now we're not going to do anything. Or it's no, man, there's a lot to do. Just be creative, understand how it works, and then have fun with it. It's kind of hacking a computer system. It's you don't just it has to go beyond just system versus system. You have to know and understand how it works. That way you can kind of tip-tap or tiptoe through the different minefields that you experience, because you will inevitably experience something that you haven't seen before. And how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, so how do you think that, over the years now, I mean, I started in 1999, and then, to now, as far as not only the learning process, but how things are taught, and the whole culture of the learning process of jiu-jitsu. I mean, I know when I started, everybody had to learn the foundation and the basic level techniques. And then it was 5-6 rounds of just trying to absolutely murder each other. You know what I mean? And it's almost hey guys, here's an arm bar and go figure it out, trying to, break a guy's arm, as now it's a more systematic based approach. How do you see that whole, even just the learning curve of how you teach change over the last, say 20 years?
Oh my gosh, it definitely has changed a lot. I think that we always have to understand that in the martial arts, we don't have it all figured out all the time. That there's always a better way, there's always a better approach, and sometimes different people learn differently. So I think accommodating your teaching for all people the best that you can, I think is best. Not everybody can memorize stuff, not everybody, but I do think that conceptual learning is best, because I think the best kind of learning is when you yourself learn it, right? It's I can talk about it all day, but when that light bulb goes on in your head, that's when you know it. That those aha moments are the moments that we're trying to create as teachers. And if I'm just telling you what to do, it's if me just instructing you how to walk, and you're dude, shut up. I know how to walk. Where it's oh, I figured out where my balance goes. I figured out how I'm supposed to step. I figured out how to, it's you did that. I helped you kind of guide you there. But you yourself did it. So it's how do I become the best guide I can be? How do I illuminate this dark forest for people, and allow them to kind of figure it out on your own? So that's what I'm trying to do, but it certainly has changed. I think even jiu-jitsu in a lot of ways, and I've talked about this before, but like, I don't know, like, is the shrimp the best or most important move that we should know? I don't know. Like, a lot of times, and this goes through any type of teaching, sometimes we repeat things without really believing them or like testing it out. So I think we need to be constantly questioning ourselves and questioning the things that we are taught. It's like, well, is that the real way? Is that how I'm supposed to do an armbar? Is that how I'm supposed to do a leg lock? And you'll find, like, how are things getting better? Is because people are asking the right questions. And I think that to ask the right question is more important in a lot of ways than just giving any answer.
Yeah.
So do you think a lot of instructors get stuck in like, okay, here's how I learned it, therefore I need to teach it this way over and over and over again?
Absolutely. I think we're all victims of that in a lot of ways because, hey, whether we had a good instructor or not, or the only instructor we had, it's like, this is what I know to be true. But the same way, it's like our parents, they did their best, but that realization, we're like, wait a sec, mom or dad didn't know about this, or they were, they had good intentions, but they were kind of wrong about this certain situation, right? So it's the same thing. It's like, we are the knowers of the knowledge. We are the ones who can figure it out and what is true to us, right? So asking those questions and investigating, not being like a pest and being like, well, would that work if I moved left and if I shift here? It's like, okay, that makes sense. But like, through your own investigation of training and sparring and open mats, I think, are great for that, where you really just kind of play and a lot of people talk about this, but playing and having that childlike approach, I think, is like such a big key to life in general, because you are inquisitive and you do see things with a fresh perspective. And when we get caught into a certain mentality, that can be a very dangerous thing, I think.
Yeah, I think for me, even, being an academy owner and, professor here, I feel like we don't give humans enough credit, in the sense that there was always a stigma, even when I was coming up, to where, don't learn this yet. You can't learn this yet. You're not a brown belt.
Right.
Or like, oh, you don't want to teach this because they'll develop a bad habit. Well, like, listen,
Sure.
just because you show somebody an armbar and they do it wrong a few times doesn't mean they're going to have that bad habit for the rest of their career. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So there's, like you said, there's a lot of playroom in there to really develop somebody's learning, and then it even changes your perspective. Maybe you learn to hip escape a certain way. One little detail could change it for somebody, and it even improves the move, even if it was just one little change you made.
I couldn't agree more. And I also think that, like, as instructors, there's so much value to, like, I learned so much from my students. There's so much value to the power of a community and the power of all the different ways that people think. Like, someone will ask a question, I'll be like, wait a sec, that's actually a really good question. Why do I do it that way? Or why is it effective when this happens? And then you start realizing, you're like, what? Thank you. You just made me a better instructor and a better martial artist, because you asked what may have been a silly question, but no one ever asked it before. So, or someone else, chiming in and saying, hey, I kind of do it like this. Is this right? And you're like, that's better than the way I was doing it. So you never know. I mean, there's so many different ways to approach it. And sometimes it's like, this is a better truth, or sometimes it just means it's a different approach. And so I think there's so much value in that. Like, the more minds that you can get together, I think the more power you have.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And then it's only going from here. You can see the exponential growth of just the the transitions and the techniques and the evolution. We're watching it as we go every weekend when there's a show, the amount of tournaments that are going on, and then a different subject. Now, you're one of the, great inspirations in Jiu Jitsu and MMA of how you were able to, combine not only, the Jiu Jitsu aspect of what you do specifically in Jiu Jitsu, but how you converted that to MMA and adapted that to MMA. Can you go into your experience, like when you first were training for MMA and, utilizing your Jiu Jitsu for that? Was that a huge step because you never really adapted to strikes, or was that an easy transition?
It was definitely difficult. I had to be aware of who I was and who I am, and what my strengths and weaknesses are. And that can be a balancing act. Sometimes you can get it twisted. So I had to be aware of like, okay, I'm not the best striker right now, but how can I utilize my current skill set to get the best result? And in the meantime, work on my weaknesses to make sure I'm filling in those gaps over time. So I think like understanding like, okay, like, am I a power guy? Am I a guy who's going to grind people down, or am I going to try to out strategize people? Am I going to try to out tech people? Am I going to be a bruiser or a brawler? Like, knowing yourself and how you work, I think, is so important. Like, clearly I wasn't the most, physically gifted guy. So I had to figure out within my means and with my abilities how I could best utilize my skills and how I could best execute on those skills. So I had to be, and I think this is for everybody, you have to be so aware of who you are, what your skill level is at. And one of the best ways to do that is by training with as many different people as possible. So I would go out and train with the best Muay Thai guys I could find. I would train with the best boxers I could find. I would train with the best wrestlers I could find. I would train with the best jiu-jitsu guys I could find, and repeat that process as much as possible. The more you see, hopefully, if you're doing it right, the more aware you become. And you start going, well, all right, my boxing sucks. I need to improve that, or I need to stay away from that. Or, the same way someone says, I'm a really good passer. I feel comfortable there. My guard is still a work in progress, not where I necessarily want to be in a fight, in a real fight, or in a jiu-jitsu match. But what you don't want to do is now say, all right, I'm good at passing. I'm not so great at guard. I'm just going to be a passing guy for the rest of my career, right? It's like now you're like, no, you went too far with that. The goal is to be as well-rounded as possible, because there's always someone who is going to be better than you in a certain area, right? I mean, jiu-jitsu is so vast, fighting is so vast, that there's so many different areas and little spots where you're going to encounter different strengths. The goal is be as well-rounded and as good as possible everywhere, but find those spots where you are stronger than others and how you can lead them into those spots as well. All the while not ignoring your weaknesses. So I think that's the balancing act that all of us as martial artists are trying to play with. And I did my best in trying to do that. I didn't always get it right. A lot of times I felt like this is a blessing and a curse for me, because I was thrown into the fire very quickly in my martial arts career. I came from soccer. I played soccer at Boston College. I got my blue belt in like a couple months. I got my purple belt in a year and a half. I got my brown belt in like 3.5 years. And I got my black belt in like 5 years. And I had my first fight like shortly after that. I was in the UFC after like four MMA fights. I fought for the world championship, 155 pounds, against Sean Shirk, who had like 40 fights when I had like 7 or 8 fights. So it was like constant, like, here you go, Kenny. Oh, you want to fight? Oh, you want to learn jiu-jitsu? Here you go, man. Play with this. So what it does, it was, I encountered a lot of adversity. I encountered some losses, but I learned a hell of a lot faster than most people because of it. So, it was good. It was tough to deal with sometimes, but losses are great blessings as well. I mean, I still learn to this day, and I got into this because I wanted to get better every day. That was my goal above anything else. And I try to remind myself of that if I encounter a tough match or a tough training session, and just be like, hey, this is what I want. I want to learn. I want to learn it all. So bring it, for better or worse. Bring it. I'll get better. I'll get better.
Yeah. I mean, what you just said is my initial inspiration for jiu-jitsu. I mean, watching the movie Choke, and then really coming from, like traditional martial arts, you saw that jiu-jitsu was about the best, no matter what the lineage and the tradition, it was about what works best for fighting. And you did exactly that. You went out there, you're training with different people, different styles. And for me, that's what I saw in jiu-jitsu. It was like, and look at Holz as an inspiration. I mean, working with Hollis and Kasai really opened up my eyes to Holz and his bringing to the table for jiu-jitsu. He trained in American wrestling and freestyle. I mean, catch wrestling, anything they can get their hands on. And that is what, in my mind, was what Brazilian jiu-jitsu was all about, and that's exactly where we're seeing nowadays. How do you think that original vision that got me inspired for jiu-jitsu, and now we're seeing kind of, you got these different factions, right? You got, everybody that's on the mindset of us, where we're just always constantly looking and striving for the new techniques, evolution. You got some camps that are, just focused on the self-defense and traditional roots aspect and ignoring a lot of the new things. You got the sub-only, leg lock games with the different points and different rule sets going on. And, obviously that was bound to happen over time, where you saw a lot of people either getting defensive on new stuff or embracing new stuff. What do you think about all that now?
Geez, there's a lot there. I think that, obviously Hollis comes from, his lineage. His dad was the one who was doing that before anyone else. He was the one who was saying, hey, guys, there's like this thing called judo, and there's this thing called sambo, and there's this thing called American wrestling. Let's invite those guys out. Let me go out and travel and learn those things. And in doing that, he made the art better from those different perspectives and from those different takes. So, I think that as martial artists, we're always looking to challenge ourselves. And I couldn't agree more that, like, all of those different tournaments and all those different approaches are ways that you can improve your game. I think that the one thing that makes us, I think, so powerful is the fact that we are unique. There is no one else like you. And finding those things that resonate with you and that make you a better version of yourself, I think is so critical. And we forget that the only ways to do that is through adversity. The only ways you could do that is through challenge. That's kind of where all of growth happens. So I think that we've come a long way. I mean, in many ways, jiu-jitsu has continued to get better. I mean, there's no doubt that jiu-jitsu is improving. You look at what like a black belt was when I got my black belt to what a purple belt is now. That's probably the equivalent. Like a purple belt today could probably kick a black belt's ass from when I got my black belt. That's just like the truth, right? So we are headed in the right direction. In some ways, competition-wise, I think we're actually regressing, because maybe not technique-wise, but mentality-wise, of going for it, of not being afraid to push yourself and train for that aspect of looking to finish a match or submit or grab as many points as possible. Sometimes we're just looking to squeak by. So I think finding the ways to push yourselves to new heights and not being afraid to take challenges, I think that's a huge thing. Courage is so important. You can't have those other things if you don't take courageous acts. Like you need to be willing to not only compete, but also bring all of yourself to those matches and all of yourself to your training sessions, and be willing to, like, hey, I'm going to work on escaping from the back. Like I'm going to be working on submission escapes today, or I'm going to be working on a position that I just absolutely suck at. And you will get humiliated, perhaps by lesser men or guys that aren't as experienced as you. But you got to do it. You got to do it if you truly want to get better and explore those unknown places.
Do you think too many athletes are focused on not losing versus winning? Like they're focused on.
Absolutely, I think that's a huge part of it. I think that's a great thing. You want to be competitive, absolutely. But let's put it this way: what's more impressive, right? Is it impressive for the guy to be a world champion and win by one advantage every match, or the guy to get to the finals and he submitted everyone along the way? He worked like crazy to try to submit the other guy. He was super close, but he lost. To me, I'm going to look at he didn't get the gold medal, but to me, that's the martial artist is the guy who took second place in that regard. And this isn't a justification, for anything other than your approach. And that's what separates the Roger Gracies from just another world champion. Like Roger didn't just win. He submitted you, and you knew exactly what he was going to do, and there wasn't a damn thing you could do to stop him. Like, that to me is something special. That's where you're like, oh, you're not good, you are great, and perhaps the greatest. Like, so what are we chasing? And again, different strokes for different folks, but I think if we're trying to do something special, we're trying to do something different, then we're going to have to take a different approach and a special approach.
Yeah, that's kind of to your point. It's like Lachlan Giles. I mean, I was at the last ADCC live, and I mean, just the performances that he had, win or lose, regardless. Did he win the bracket? Nobody cared. It was just the sheer intent, and just did it against in the open weight, and it was just amazing. That's to your point.
Absolutely, he was the hero. He was the hero of ADCC for me in a lot of ways. He didn't win the gold in his division or in the absolute, but to me, I think he was maybe top 3 most impressive athletes at the tournament, and that says a lot with all the talent that was there. So, Lachlan is a great example of that.
Yeah, I mean, you're in a really unique position too, because you see a lot of these events, you commentate at a lot of these events, and the events that have different rule sets. I mean, so what's your take now on the specific rule sets? Now that we're talking about that, we're seeing a lot of events where everybody's trained to hold position, get points, win, and they're not really in their mind trying to really hit that submission, which is that's the goal in jiu-jitsu. You just had a podcast with John Donaher, and he was saying there was 3 big things he wanted to change in jiu-jitsu: the leg locks, jiu-jitsu guys be able to do takedowns in a great way, and the ability to hold somebody down that wants to stand up. You don't really see that a lot in jiu-jitsu. So these are things that we can attack, and via the rule sets. I mean, I just seem to think that if we're going to focus on, we understand why positionally you were awarded points and they were created, like 3 points to pass, 4 for mount. But over time now we're seeing people that just are really good at that. And yeah, of course the goal is submission, but now there's strategy in there. We got to be pushing for the submission more. There's a lot of questions in that, but what do you think?
Greg, I think it's a really tough question. I think that there's a couple things, right? I think that humans are very adaptable and very creative and very crafty, and they will inevitably adapt their game for a rule set. Like, they'll always find a loophole, right? It's like any law that's made, someone will always find a way to be like, yeah, but I'm going to be over here on the edge of it and like expose that law or that loophole. So I think that a couple things, right? It's like the instructors have to instill that certain mindset and allow people to really understand how to go about the game. So I think there's that factor. I also think the referees honestly need to do more and not be afraid to penalize people for stalling or not moving. And so much of it, it's like, think about the mindset of like, I don't know, if we were to referee a match between Joe Blow and Henry, right? And then think about the difference between us, reffing a match between, I don't know, Marcelo Garcia and Gordon Ryan. You're like, think about your mentality, how that just shifted and how it changed. Like, Gordon, can you please not that they would ever stall, but like, you're like, people are going to be intimidated or afraid to make certain calls based on who's coaching, based on who's competing. I trained with this guy one time, or Fabio Gurgel is yelling at me from the corner. I feel afraid to or I'm going to make a call because so-and-so Gracie's yelling at me. These are all factors that are very real. Okay, whether we want to ignore it or not, like that's real. And referees, I feel like, need to do their part to push the action a little bit more. So it's a tough situation. And so I think it comes down to the approach of the competitor, and I think the referee of just not being afraid to really push the action. I think one simple thing would be no steps backwards. Just like folk style wrestling, freestyle wrestling, you're not allowed to take a step backwards. Like unless they have a good connection, like I don't really think if you are not touching your opponent, you should not be able to take a step backwards. I think just that alone would help. That's like one little simple thing to help push along the matches, because like how many times, like the Kasai match, when I talked to Rich about this, it was like, the side mat is freaking huge, okay? How many times did guys end up almost off the mat or off the mat? Because the one dude's like backing up and he gets all the way to the edge of the corner. He's like, okay, if you try to take me down, I'm just going to go out of bounds and you're not going to get your point. So again, that's like how as humans we adapt to certain things. So it's like, if he wasn't allowed to take a step backwards, that wouldn't happen. Now the big mat serves a purpose, I think.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, you just hit on something that I've been thinking and for a while is not only the stepping back, but if you're seeing like somebody's standing and then somebody's playing bottom, especially with somebody who's a leg attack guy, if they get caught up in an ashi or something and they just turn and rip their leg out and escape. Now, is that, to me, that's not pushing forward. Yeah, you were trying to get out of an ashi or something, but to me, that counts as stepping back. Like you're not trying to break through and pass the guard at that point. Somebody leg entangles you and you're just ripping out and you're stepping back and resetting. Like we saw that happen so many times. I think that should be, a stalling type of a thing.
Greg, that's a great point. Actually, that could actually be, hey, if you rip out of a submission, like then, and you break away, shouldn't that be maybe a -1 for you or a +1 for them, or at least, right? Like that's a great point. I mean, just little things like that to get people to understand, like, all right, that was attack. You ran away from the situation. The same way if like you come at me with a knife, it's like you have the advantage. I'm getting the hell out of there. Like so that's a good point.
Yeah, I've seen so many matches where the whole match was just that. You try to pass, the guy leg entangles you. You don't want to be involved in leg locks. You turn around and rip your leg, and then it keeps going on like that. Like I think is a huge thing.
Right. And it's like, if you score that a draw, like I don't think that's right. If the guy on bottom is attacking and had your leg in a compromised situation and you had to rip out of it and run away, that guy should have won the match. The guy on bottom should have won the match for getting that attack, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I said this on a couple of podcasts, and I'm kind of getting to the point of it's making more sense. If you look at wrestling and if you look at judo, that has a lot more time in as far as adjusting to rule sets. What's the goal in judo? The goal in judo is the ippon. What's the goal in wrestling? The goal in wrestling is the pin. The only points that surround those rule sets is only around the goal. So in judo, you're only getting like a wazari or half point because you almost got the ippon. In wrestling, you'll get back points because you almost got the pin. They're not giving you positional points. So I think in jiu-jitsu, if we take a little, lesson from wrestling and judo, we should only be awarding things based on the submission. Our goal in jiu-jitsu is submission. And granted, positions are great, but even to this point, like if I pass your guard and hold you down, but you replace that guard back, I don't think I should be awarded the guard pass points. And there's something to be said about like, positionally in a street fight, I get it. If you hold somebody in the mount or you pass their guard, I could have sat up and hit you. But to that point, if I sat up and hit you when I passed you in side control, you can replace. I just made room.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point. I also think like, I know that if you mount me, right, you're in a big advantage, right? But if I reverse you and get on top, what's the difference between me being in a guard and getting on top and me being in mount and getting on top? Like, I don't know. I think in a lot of ways that also, maybe doesn't reward the guy on bottom like he should. I don't know. I'm trying to think of it differently, but I think that things like that are situations where we should be evaluating it and saying, what are we trying to do as a martial art here? Because we are, whether we admit it or not, there's a lot of sport jiu-jitsu at different academies that we might be shifting towards the Taekwondo model. And, I think what made Brazilian jiu-jitsu so awesome was the fact that it was effective with resistance. It was effective against people who were trying to beat us up. Are we, if I get in a fight with a group of people, do I want the dude who's like a staller in jiu-jitsu, who's like a really like world-class staller? If we get in a fight and your life is on the line, is that the guy you choose to be on your team? I don't know.
Good point.
I think, I think that like, what are we trying to do as a martial art? Are we trying to, defend ourselves? Are we trying to, stop an attacker? Are we trying to nullify? Yeah, and it might be different. These might be different answers for different people, but I think it's something we need to constantly question of what direction we're heading.
Yeah, you just hit that right into the next subject, which is, I mean, there's a certain thing. And jiu-jitsu is based on fighting and realism. However, if we're going to improve the sport and open up the sport aspect to not only more spectators and people that like to watch it, but, growing it for the professional athlete, then we kind of maybe do have to take that split and, okay, listen, we're not going to make the rules just based around does it work in self-defense. We got to make it around, is it exciting and is it going to push the submission? Because even as an academy owner, a lot of people want self-defense, but I have to tell you, that's not the main reason why people walk in my door. They walk in my door, they hear about it, they see it, they see celebrities doing it. Maybe they want, it's just another variation of a workout. Sure. And now secondarily, they're going to get self-defense from that. You know what I mean? But a lot of people don't walk in my door and say, I need to know how to protect myself now. Where back in the day, maybe that's what the case, what do you think?
That's true. That's true. I think that things are shifting and we also need to be able to, if we're running a business and we're trying to accommodate the people that are looking for a workout or looking for something fun to do, I think the other thing, the big impediment to people joining jiu-jitsu in a lot of ways was the fact that they didn't want to get hurt. You're like, wait a sec, you guys are like learning to fight in here? Like, I'm good. I'll come back another day, and you never see them again. So it's finding those ways that you can, make your business, cater, or how you can cater your business to as many different people as possible. And, it's a market that's constantly adapting and adjusting. And I think as business owners, as instructors, we have to constantly find out and kind of be in tune with that and see what we're going to offer.
Yeah, I mean, and talking about that as an academy owner, you were a big inspiration for us here at Hampton's Jiu-Jitsu and how the design, at Meraki and just the look and everything about it, not just that it's high end, but just that to that point, you got to be able to accept people that walk in the door that are looking for different things. I mean, and shout out to all those guys that train in the worst of conditions and they come up hard and it's amazing. But, to have a business that can accept people from different walks of life, way different goals, I think is a huge point. Was that your goal there?
Absolutely. I think that like a lot of people kind of talk about golf as that thing that kind of unites people and like it, you go, your business meeting or whatever, you kind of go out or you get your friends together and you play golf. I don't think there is any other sport that unites all the different walks of life more than jiu-jitsu. Like you look at any jiu-jitsu mat across, the country and you ask what everybody does, everyone's going to have a different answer. Like you will have, the mechanic, the engineer, the doctor, the lawyer, the plumber, all on the same mat, sweating and training and challenging each other. Like that's really cool. And I don't think there's any other sport that's like that you get all the different walks of life and people actually be cool with each other and respect each other. It's like all those other things that separate us don't matter on the mat. And I think we kind of need that more than ever in today's divided world. So I think I mean, most of my friends and most of my relationships are because of jiu-jitsu. Like I don't have many friends outside of, I don't have many friends, but I don't have many friends outside of jiu-jitsu and fighting, I don't know what it is, but I think that there is this respect and kind of this common goal amongst the community of like, hey, I see you working on yourself. I see you working your ass off. I respect that. You give me good roles. You help me out. I help you out. We're cool. Like, and I think that dynamic is what makes jiu-jitsu so special as well.
I think it makes you bond at a different level, right? Than just, it's
For
a different
sure.
type of friendship,
Sure.
I mean, you're beating the crap out of each other,
Yes. Yes. And it's so true. Like, think about it, so much about that person after you roll. Like you can have one roll with that person. You're like, you didn't say one word. I know a lot about who you are and what you're about. That's pretty cool.
A huge point. You say that every time. I truly believe that. You can roll with somebody and you know more about their personality than even just talking to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, where they get frustrated or they break, or you know what I
Right.
mean? Like you can tell, or they're
Absolutely.
laughing. I laugh when I get caught in submissions because I'm like, I didn't expect that, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you're taking it as play, or you get the guy who's like, "Fuck," runs off the mat swearing, all pissed off. You're like, okay, man, I know how you deal with struggle.
Yeah.
Okay.
How do you structure things over at your academy there? I mean, in a post-COVID world, not only that, but just the fact that, we spoke about it before is, there's no secrets in jiu-jitsu. I think the goal for the Jiu-Jitsu Academy owner, because there's so much information out there, is the culture you build and how you're able to accommodate all of the different people that have different goals. How do you address that?
Yeah, listen, I think you're correct. I am only now affiliated with Florian Martial Arts Center. I since moved, no longer in LA. But I think one thing that's super important, I think, is trying to create a family atmosphere the best that you can. I think that was a big thing that my original instructor, Roberto Maya, instilled. He was like, this is just like kind of one big family. And trying to create that dynamic and everyone kind of helping each other and pushing each other, I think is huge, because things will inevitably be hard, and thinking that you're alone in the world, or that your experience is different from someone else, is a dangerous thing. So I think that, like, seeing how other people deal with chaos, seeing how other people go from not knowing any jiu-jitsu to being like extremely proficient, or seeing that person who is extremely shy that won't look anybody in the eye, and then over months and years they're shaking your hand and actually initiating a hello and looking you in the eye, and like that's stuff that you cannot buy. So I think that, like, making it a positive environment, making it a place where we are always pushing each other to get better and evolve, I think is huge. That we are taking positions and having different opportunities to show courage. And yeah, I mean, just pushing our boundaries, pushing our limits, and having it be reasonable as well. I think as instructors, we can also maybe go too far. And you have to understand, like, hey, is this like a 55-year-old dude who I should be treating like a 21-year-old guy who has come to me who says he wants to be a competitor? Probably not. So it's like, how do I adjust myself for the different students that I have and allow for everybody to have their goals? Like, we want to share fundamental values, but also understand that we are all at different parts of our lives, and managing that the best that we can, I think is super important.
Yeah, 100%. That's spot on. So we're going to shift a little bit. We have a couple of videos for you. So on JJM here, we like to have people submit videos of them rolling. And we have a video submission here. We want you to kind of be your, it's great that you commentate all the time. This is perfect. So kind of give us like a quick play-by-play of what you see, some tips for somebody. So we've got this random submission here, and just want to give you get some comments on this role in general.
Okay. So am I commenting about both guys or just one guy?
Both.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That was a nice little Sumagaeshi takedown. Just got right underneath his center of mass there. Was able to roll him. Now he's in that top position. Other guy's doing a good job of using that underhook to try to get up, but now has kind of compromised his position. His head is too far away from his hips. And you see the other guy trying to get him back to his back. He's got that half Nelson. And now trying to attack some kind of a front choke, it seems. But the other guy's doing a great job of opening up his elbow and utilizing his shoulder to move the guy on top. And now he's in a great position to maybe take the back and come on top. The other guy's attacking the Kimura.
Yeah, he exposed his back. He exposed his back by hugging the head there, yeah.
Yep. And it seemed like the guy in the red shorts was kind of more submission-oriented, but wasn't so aware of his position. That's a nice sweep. The guy on top put a little bit too much of his weight directly on top of the other person, which allowed that person to roll him and get underneath him. That Kimura grip saved him. Yeah, that Kimura grip saved him. Nice job by Mr. Red Shorts there. I was
Turtled up.
looking to try to get that front choke. Oh, nice. Oh, and he
So,
escaped.
It's almost like a
These guys
Peruvian
are staying
for a
active.
second.
Yeah,
Yeah.
these guys are
Nice.
staying active, man. That's for sure. They're having fun. Legs too close together. Not a great base. Got taken down
Yeah.
immediately with a double.
Yeah, it looks like it might even be. I'm not sure what rule set we're in. It may even be like a catch wrestling.
It's like
thing.
I think it is. I think it's like
Oh, yeah,
combat
he's got-
wrestling.
Yeah,
Combat wrestling
like,
rules.
he's got the Sambo shoes on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice attempt at a Osotogari, and the other guy's on top now.
But that just shows you how much so many of these things are related, all these
Yeah.
grappling arts, because you see things we traditionally name in jiu-jitsu, right? And it may be something else in combat wrestling. But we see it's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu school.
Yeah,
They're
it's
up on the sign.
Yeah, they're probably it looks different.
And it makes sense that these guys are going for submissions really quickly, like because they probably don't have a whole lot of time to go for it. So that's neat.
Yeah. A lot of people don't recognize or remember the old school combat wrestling in Japan with Rumina Sato and all these old school Domi. Like that was really interesting rule set,
Amazing.
He took the back here, trying to maybe get the hooks in. Oh, looks like he's trying to get a lift, a little wrestling lift maybe.
And it's also interesting. It's wrestling too because we see a lot of turtling.
See a lot of turtling. You see a lot of like Greco gripping here. Okay,
Right.
interesting. Nice.
That's cool.
That's see some takedown action.
Hit that 2-on-1.
He almost gave it up though. Like
a little sacrifice.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't really get around to an angle there. Now it looks like he's trying to get head on the inside. Now he's got his back taken.
I got a gift wrap for a second.
Oh, look at this. This is going to be a choke.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Did he get it or wasn't allowed to
catch
choke?
style crank, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Interesting.
He had both arms trapped and then kind of went for Jeff Glover does a technique like that, which is pretty cool. But I wonder if chokes maybe weren't allowed because it's Sambo or something. Another beautiful Sumagaeshi with a
resetting
grip.
even after the tap. It's got to be a different format here.
It's definitely. I think it's combat wrestling is what they said.
Okay.
So which is as Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys, we're also like, okay, what's up with the wrestling shoes?
Yeah. Hey, you saw that in ADCC,
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
True.
Looks like an arm triangle is about to happen.
Yeah.
See now here, arm triangle, right?
Yes.
No need to escape the legs sometimes, like
right. No, you could totally get actually, in fact, I do commentary for the PFL now. We had a arm triangle from half guard, and we had an arm triangle from close guard that the guy on top hit. And I was like, put him to sleep. It wasn't like, oh, he tapped early. Put him to sleep. So that grip, anytime you can get a hold of that neck, it's so weak.
That's like Vitor Shaolin. I've seen Shaolin do a lot of his arm triangles starting even enclosed.
Absolutely, man.
That's interesting because I do a lot from half guard. Like it's one of the things I catch a lot. Now I'm going to actually attempt it from full guard now.
It's a good. The good time to do it is when they sit up to the upa. You like clasp it and put them on their back. I've hit it a couple times too. It throws people off because they're like, "There's no way they can hit this." Like,
good. Yeah, this was
you could surprise people.
Yeah,
that was cool.
That was a good video submission there. We have one more little clip, which is a cool thing that we can get you to commentate because this video was on Instagram and social media and got a lot of views here.
That guy on top is a punk. Clearly doesn't know what the heck he's doing.
Yeah, this was a great role with Grace, right? Yeah,
she's awesome, man. It was so cool to just feel what she's doing and what she's trying to do. Her sensitivity is really good. She is very active as far as going for submissions and things like that. So I was really curious to kind of just play defensively and see what she would do to attack. And I tell you what, she has so much promise. She's already killing it, but she's still young. Like she is going to be so much better. So that's scary. That's awesome. So talented.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize too, the Kasai events, we had this, every event we have, Rich always set up a secret role right the night before and invents all the, it invites all the fighters and stuff. So this is the first time it was actually exposed.
Yep. It's so cool.
There was Rich in the background, actually.
Yeah, you'll see the Meow Brothers in the background, 10th Planet guys, Unity guys, the Tackett was in the background. You see people from all over the place. They're the Meow Brothers in the corner, getting together and rolling, and it's so cool. This is the kind of stuff that I think that is going to make jiu-jitsu better. When you see people cross training with each other, and in that training environment too, I think it's very different than competition where you are. You're going to see people open up a little bit more, and you can learn so much. You see, there's Tackett, and it's cool.
Yeah, I think that says so much about jiu-jitsu. We got to think more of a big community rather than, we're going to fight at a local tournament versus rival schools from the town over kind of thing.
Right. And it's gotten so much better. But back in the day, I'm sure, as you know, like it was like people were out for blood. Like you didn't shake hands with someone from a different academy. You didn't say hello to someone from a different academy.
What's crazy is you still see that. We had a local tournament recently. You still see that same kind of mentality that we got to get out of that, And I think to this case, with this video, Grace, just, the fact that you said she's so young, I think that shows that the learning curve has been shortened, but that's what jiu-jitsu is about. That's what we want, right? We want people to be able to develop legit techniques quicker than we did it. And, that's nothing, that's only going to be good for the sport.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And, rolling with someone like Grace and seeing how she approaches the game was something that, I learned from. So you really can learn from anyone at any level. I mean, obviously it's easy to learn from someone like Grace, but you can even learn from, the white belt who might do something a little bit different or might ask a question or, there's so much to learn in all different scenarios. And it's cool when you get to train with high level people, you're going to learn that much more. So it's awesome.
Awesome. Well, yeah. So no, that's cool. Yeah, I just wanted to throw that clip up there for you.
That's cool.
What do you have? What do you have coming up? What's coming up for you?
Let's see. So I just finished doing commentary for the PFL. We have the playoffs coming up in August. So we have the semifinals for featherweight, lightweight, welterweight, light heavyweight, and heavyweight, and lightweight women's division. So that's coming up in August, and then I have BattleBots after that, filming that, and I think the next thing that is coming out now is I'll be releasing my instructional in the next couple weeks, and that will be an instructional that's going to be covering concepts and like fundamentals for whether you're just starting, you have zero jiu-jitsu experience, or whether you're an experienced black belt, something that is going to allow you to take the techniques that you have and put them into the context of position. Like, how does this position work? What should I be doing? How do these techniques work? And I hope that people find a lot of value on it. And they can check out my YouTube channel or check out KennyFlorian.com. I'm in the process of changing that website, but that's pretty much it. What I have going on in the short term.
Where can people find that instructional? Just KennyFlorian.com or
KennyFlorian.com. It's not set up yet, but I will be releasing it in the next few weeks. And you can sign up for my newsletter. I'll be giving information on that. And
Awesome. Yeah, maybe we can get you back to do a little review of that instructional. And
thank you. I'd love
definitely,
to.
Definitely check out. Everybody check out Kenny's YouTube channel. It's already has a lot of awesome content on there, like talking about conceptually learning techniques. And I think it's a great way to be able to show those techniques. So everybody check that out too.
And make sure you subscribe to his newsletter so you don't miss anything. That's probably the most important thing, man.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Definitely. So Kenny, we really appreciate you coming on, man, and look forward to you coming back. And guys, make sure you keep subscribing, keep sending us your rolling videos right on the Jiu-Jitsu Motivation website. So when we have guests on, we can have them review your rolls. And stay in touch with us. We got shows releasing every Friday. You can get it at Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and right here on YouTube.
All right. And make sure you subscribe to our newsletter also, guys.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Brian, thank you.